What's up, good people? It's Matt from Music Producer School. Forgot to turn my camera on there. All right, it's Tuesday. Hope everybody's doing good today. Leave me a comment if you're here and you're watching. Let me know where you're watching from. We got people watching from all over the world, which is cool. Hey, a quick tip for all of my international people, and I know we got a bunch of them. If you do not speak English, is not your native language, you can join on YouTube, and if you watch on YouTube, you can hit the little caption button, and you can select your language. And I believe YouTube auto translates even for live now. So you can watch along with us live and it'll translate the captions into your personal language that you choose. So I wanted to invite anybody. What's up, Joey? Good to see you again, my friend. So anybody that's watching internationally, or if you don't speak English as a first language, be sure to watch us on YouTube. The channel is Music Producer School at YouTube, and I'll go ahead and put my quick link to everything where you can find all of our stuff. Let me go throw that in real quick for you. So you can watch us on Facebook, Periscope, YouTube, or Twitch. So any one of those that you prefer. And here is the link. What's up, kiddo from Zambia? That's what I'm talking about. We got people all over the world watching. It's awesome. So there's the link, you guys, for anybody that wants to find us on the other channels. Like I said, if English is not your first language, watch us on YouTube, and that should be able to translate. You can choose your language, and it does it live. So that may help out some of our international students. The final thing, as always, I wanted to invite everybody, if you haven't already, to please join the Music Producer School community. I'm putting the link for that in the Facebook comments right now. That is our private Facebook community where I go every Saturday and I allow you to post your music up there. And I've been listening to everybody's music that posts it there. And I have it set up to where I can listen on headphones and my studio speakers here in the studio. And I'm able to give feedback on your tracks, mixing, songwriting, samples, sounds, just the whole thing. So it's been a lot of fun listening to everybody's songs, and I think the people that have done it so far have gotten some good benefit out of it. And I'm enjoying listening to you guys and girls' music. It's a lot better than I thought it was going to be, honestly. Yeah, kiddo, I allow questions. There's a delay on the comments, so if it takes me a second to respond, it's all good. But yeah, kiddo, let me know what your question is. I'll hit you up. And real quick, for everybody joining, this week we're going to be covering mastering, which is a whole dark art unto itself. So I'm not going to go into the extreme details of it this week, but I wanted to give kind of an overview, because here's the reality, folks. All of us want to put out music. Not all of us. What's up, Star Cool? Thanks for watching from Nigeria. We got a lot of Nigerian people watching. That's what's up. Good to see you. So all of us put out music, right? Or we want to put out music. And you don't want to put it out sounding like shit. So we want to get it mastered, mixed obviously, but mastered, because we want it to compete with everybody else's tracks. And here's the reality. Depending on the project, you don't always have the budget to get your stuff properly mastered. So especially if it's like a mixtape thing, or it's just kind of like something you want to just put out quick for some specific reason, it doesn't always make sense to maybe pay $100 per song to get your stuff mastered at a proper mastering facility. Mastering is not just necessarily the sound. There's also some things that happen in mastering. There's things like metadata, which if you're not sure what metadata is, that's like when you make an MP3 and it's going to contain in the data part of that file, it's going to have like your title, your artist name, the track length, all that type of stuff. So there are other things that go along with mastering that are not just the sound, but what I'm going to pertain primarily this week, I'm going to stick to is just more of the sound aspect and what we can do to get our songs to sound better and at least be in the same ballpark as what you hear some of your favorite artists and some of your favorite producers putting out. So for example, like if you're a beat maker, ultimately, if you're just making beats that you want to get an artist on, you don't necessarily need to spend weeks mastering your beats, because eventually when you put the vocals and all that stuff on there, everything's going to have to be remixed and mastered according to what happened with the vocals and if you change stuff in the track, right? So I'm going to try and show you guys, especially today, just a brief overview of some of my approaches to mastering and also some strategies that you can try out that will help your kind of home mastering techniques, because let's be honest, we all don't have the money to just get our stuff sent off to the awesome mastering company each time we want to put out music. So kiddo, whenever you got your question ready, I will be on the lookout for it. We got, yeah, Star Cool in the house. Onyekachi, I'm probably not saying that right, but I am located in the United States, and it looks like Hernani Nani tagged somebody. So hey, thank y'all for joining me. I appreciate it. Let's get started with some mastering techniques. So once again, I am going to be here in Ableton, but again, you can do this stuff in FL. I know we have a lot of FL Studio users. I may flip up FL at the end here. It's just FL is sometimes a little bit buggy on my machine. So what I wanted to show y'all is a couple different strategies that I like to use when I'm mastering, and a couple of the things you need to look out for. So let me just pull in, let me see if I have a couple quick little loops that I can pull in here. Just, I'm not even worried about listening to them, but I want to just show y'all some audio so you can see. Well, we could maybe do, let me see if I have a quick little drum loop I can throw in here maybe. Alright, probably not that. Let's see. I think that synth is not wanting to play nicely. Let's try one of these. Let me see if I have something in the same tempo here, or close to it. Alright, this should probably work. Something like this. The sound on this doesn't really matter today. Oh, I'm at 200 BPM. Excuse me. Even the pros make mistakes, you guys. Alright, let's see what this amateur synth loop is about. Alright, that's cool. That'll work. So this is what I wanted to show y'all for today. One of the best strategies that you can use when you are trying to master stuff is reference tracks, okay? Reference tracks. Now, the issue I'm going to have here with reference tracks doing a live stream like this is you have to be careful if any of you guys have ever tried to live stream some of your stuff. Facebook is getting very, let's just say, strict about playing other people's recorded music on your live streams. So let me show y'all, while we're at it, another quick little trick. I'm gonna go to Facebook. I think it's called Facebook Sound Library. So yeah, Facebook Sound Collection. So this is where you can download free, royalty-free music that you're not going to basically get in trouble for. for playing it on a live stream. So I'm going to find me a quick little, let's see if we could find us an electronic song, something that is groovy. Let's see how this sounds. Yeah, that's fine. So I'm going to download this, okay? And it's a waveform, even better. A lot of times they'll just give you like MP3s, but I think the Facebook stuff. So for any of you guys that maybe make videos and stuff like that, where you don't necessarily have music to use, this is a cool place to go. This is the Facebook Sound Collection, it's called. So let me get out of that. And I'm going to bring this Funktology track into my song here. And let me flip back into live. All right. So I just drug my Facebook free song download into the track. And this is it up here in yellow. So I'm going to put it on its own track. And I'm going to get rid of this EQ. I don't need any EQs today. At least not for this. So here is 4 bars of the first little thing I threw together with the loops. And this is 4 bars of the track I just downloaded from Facebook. And you can see it's like crazy loud. So let's get this down maybe. Let's say this is going to be -12. And let's put our other tracks at -12 and see how they compare. Now, just from looking at the waveform, and this is part of the lesson today that I'm going to show you guys. You know, when I first started producing, I had this idea in my head that I wasn't supposed to look at stuff because these old producers and engineers, they would say, oh, you know, looking at a screen is distracting your ears. So that's why mixing in computers is bad and you got to do it all analog and everything. And actually, there's no problem with using all of the senses that you can use, your eyes and your ears, when you're mixing. So I would encourage you to start, you know, gathering information about what you can when it comes to looking at your waveforms. So immediately I can see that this synth loop up here is bigger and means has more energy, more volume than this drum loop right here, right? Yeah, this drum loop has a kick drum and everything in it. This synth loop, and they're both at -12 dB. So you can hear it's way louder. So in Ableton here, I can go actually just on the clip itself, and I can bring the volume down here. And I'm just going to look kind of visually and say, okay, well, I'm making it look about the same size as the drums. Let's see how that sounds now with the drums. And they're both at -12 dB. Still sounds a little bit loud. Let's try and go down a little bit more. Let's go way more. And that's another quick little tip I wanted to give y'all for today. I think I've mentioned it once before, but when you're doing things like volume adjustments, if you start just changing like 1 dB, 2 dB at a time, it's hard to hear, especially after you've been mixing for a while. So one thing I personally like to do is I'll go way more than I think I should, and then I'll bring it back up. So in other words, instead of just bringing this loop down a couple 1, 2 dB, from this point I can hear it's still pretty loud. So I would say, okay, instead of just bringing it's at -7 right now. Instead of just bringing it to like -8 or -9, I would say, okay, let me double it and let me go down to like -14 or 15 and try that. See, and that still sounds like it's a little bit loud. So I'll keep going and I'll go a little bit more than I think I should. And then I'll start cutting it back up a little bit. So let's cut it back up. We made it all the way to -20. Okay, so something like that. So now let's compare it to this other track, which just again, from looking at it, this track isn't completely smashed with a limiter, so it's not completely maximized, but it definitely has more energy than these two tracks are going to have. So let's listen to the downloaded one again. And now I'm going to flip off the solo and flip between them. So both these tracks now are at the same dB level on the channel faders, -12, -12, -12. But this one, because it's been, you know, mastered in some sort of way, of course, it's louder, it has more energy, right? So what I wanted to show y'all today, and the reason I brought this extra track in from Facebook, is I wanted to show you my strategy for what I call using reference tracks. Because reference tracks are definitely the most important thing and one of the most important tools you can use when you're trying to get your stuff mastered and sounding good, like you're used to hearing some of your favorite, you know, DJ tracks or, you know, favorite producer on the radio's tracks. You want to just make it sound finished, right? Now, when I'm listening to a reference track from a mixer and an artist that I know is done very well, the first thing I'm listening for is the balances, meaning where is the vocal sitting in relation to the rest of the track? Is the vocal kind of like barely above the track, or is the vocal sitting super high on top of the track? A lot of that depends on the genre of music sometimes. You know, rock music tends to be a little bit more, the vocals a little bit closer, like kind of in the track. Pop music and a lot of rap stuff is usually above the track. So you have to think about the genre and listen to some examples. So I'm not going to worry about pulling in other tracks, but let's just pretend for time's sake here, let's just pretend that I had pulled in another track and this was the second track. So I'm going to actually label these. It'll be a little bit easier for us to follow. And I'm going to show you this method that I use, which I think is pretty cool to do this. Okay, so I'm going to call this reference 1. I'm going to call this reference 2. And I'm going to call this reference 3. Oh, I should have hit enter. Reference 1. Reference 2. Reference 3. All right, and then we'll do the same thing here because y'all know I'm a freak about labeling stuff. Reference 2 and reference 3, right? So these are our reference tracks, and I'll go ahead and put these in red so that's very apparent that it's our reference tracks and we won't lose track of them. And then let's just say this, and I'll go ahead and even... let's see if I have a quick little bass loop I can throw in here. Let me do my same volume adjustment here. Get it in the same ballpark. Okay, let's listen to this. All right, and the sound of this doesn't really matter today because it's more about the process that I'm showing y'all for this stuff. Okay, so we have our tracks, right? So this is, we'll call this synth 1, call this bass, and we'll call this drums. Y'all know I like my drums in yellow, my bass in blue, and my synths I usually put in a green, right? And I definitely believe in taking the time to do this because it's just easier to find out what's what, right? Okay, so I'm going to group all of my stuff and I'm going to call this my track. So what I like to do when I'm mastering is I have my tracks here that I'm working on, right? These 3 tracks. And then I'll pull in these reference tracks. And then what I wanted to show y'all today to be sure of, because I think a lot of people screw this up, and this is going to be the majority of the lesson here, is when you put mastering plugins on here, okay? I got my limiter. I would usually put 1 or 2 compressors. And that's another quick little mastering tip for you guys. And this works when mixing also. It's very hard for these compressors and limiters if you just send in a whole track into one compressor. It's very hard for it to do its job without you hearing the compressor kind of pump and suck. Sometimes you want that effect, but when we're mastering specifically, you usually don't want to hear any extra pumping. That's more of like a sound design and a production thing. So putting a couple compressors on your master chain to where when we play this stuff, so see, like right there, I'm hitting that compressor a good bit. Like almost 8, 9, 10 dB. You don't want to be hitting that on your master track. On your master track, you'd only want to be getting maybe like 1 to 2 dB of compression at a time per compressor. So what I would usually do is set this threshold up, and I'm just on the mastering chain on my master, I'm usually just trying to catch those little peaks. So I'm going to bring my attack down to very quick, so that way it's catching just those peaks and pushing them down really quick, but you don't want to have a lot of compression going on. So my ratio, I'm going to put at 2 to 1. My release is fine there. Usually I'll set that to like auto, and attack I'm going to have very quick, okay? And then my threshold while the track is playing. And another important mastering tip for today is I'll usually do this process. I'll at least start it at the loudest part of my track. So like if you have like a big drop, or like especially like the chorus where the vocalist is really getting it, set a loop on that part of the track because that's the loudest part of the track. That's what you want to be setting your compressors and your limiters to, because they can definitely handle the quieter stuff at the beginning of the track. It's when the track is at its loudest, that's where you need to worry about it the most. So I'm going to set my threshold here to where I'm only getting about 1, maybe 1.5 dB of compression. So something about right there. And then what I would do is on my next compressor, I'm going to set up the same deal. 2 to 1 ratio, super quick attack, auto release. And again, you can play with all these settings to whatever sounds best on your ear. But the idea is on the mastering chain, it's a very fast attack because all these little peaks, if you're not sure how a compressor works, I covered it before in the mixing section, but you set a threshold on your compressor, right? So your sound is doing like this. Well, the threshold says whenever your sound goes over the threshold, so if I have it set at 2 to 1, it says every 2 dB over the threshold, only let 1 dB through. If I had it set at 4 to 1, it's saying every 4 dB that goes through above the threshold, only let 1 dB go through. So that's how it kind of clamps down on the sound and reduces the volume. So on my second compressor, I would now set and do the same thing. So you can see there, I'm just getting just a little bit of compression going on each one. So what this does is it allows each compressor to not have to work quite as hard. And then you'll also, as you start doing this more, you'll start to learn that different compressors react differently to different types of sounds. So you'll actually start to learn, oh, this compressor works really good for quick attacks like drum stuff. This works good for vocals and so on. But you just gotta play with it and learn the sounds of them. So now that I have my compressors working, and this is called in serial, meaning it goes from one to the next one from this one then to this one, and that's how the sound is going through. Now I can hit my limiter, and again, the limiter is basically more or less like another compressor, but it just has a super high ratio, which means basically it's more or less not going to let anything go over the threshold. So now with my gain here, I can start getting just a little bit of reduction as well. So the first thing I can do is with my ceiling, I'll set it to where I'm just getting another like maybe dB of reduction. So you'll probably notice there when that snare is hitting, that's when my ceiling starts to kick in. Watch the meter on the ceiling of the limiter right here. Watch the reduction right here. You'll hear it on the 2 and the 4 of that snare. So that's essentially, if you start listening while you're watching your meters, that's going to teach you how to start recognizing, oh, my snare is what's making the limiter clamp down like that. So let's say you're having an issue where your track, you can't quite get it loud enough. If you start to learn how to visually look at this stuff and listen at the same time, you're going to be able to recognize, oh, maybe my snare is a little bit too loud. It's causing my limiter to really clamp down on the track. Because what's going to happen is if you have, let's say, like a vocal going on during this song, every time that snare hits, if it's the loudest piece like that, it's going to clamp down and the vocal is going to go down with the limiter, and you're going to start losing power in your song because the vocal, of course, if people feel like the vocalist is getting softer, the power is not going to be there. So this is a method of using your eyes and your ears. Watch your meters, but don't just watch them and be like, you know, like they're just dancing around for no reason. Start to listen and see, okay, why is the meter reacting that way? What is the sound that's making the meter react that way, right? So now we have basically 3 dynamic level plugins all in a row in serial, and each one of them doesn't have to work super hard and clamp down a bunch on the track. Each one is just clamping down a little bit, and it's just going to nicely even out our track. So I did this now, and I'm going to keep this one short and to the point for today, but I wanted to show you all that kind of serial compression and limiting idea, because that's huge when it comes to mixing and mastering your own stuff. Because what happens is a lot of people tend to just throw one limiter on there on the master channel or a maximizer, and they just crank it to where it starts distorting and the whole track sounds like shit. So you have to learn these techniques where it's just a little bit at a time over the course of the track. So let me show you all this really quick, and I'll probably expand on this more in the second lesson on Thursday. So once you get your track to this point, right, and we've got everything rolling on our track, and we're listening. Okay, cool. But now if we want to listen to a reference track, what you have to be sure of, and this is where a lot of people screw this up, they'll take their reference track. So you can see here, my track right here, I'll relabel it, my track. You can see is going to the master channel, right? And this is just like in FL, Logic, all the other DAWs work this way. My track is going to the master down here, right? My master outputs, these are my main speaker outputs, 33 and 34. That's the actual physical outputs for my speakers from my master channel. So my speakers, like literally the wires for my speakers, are going out 33 and 34. I'm sending my track to the master channel, and the master channel goes out 33 and 34. Now, if I'm trying to reference stuff, I'm going to get rid of my inputs because I don't want to get any random stuff going into my channels. Now, if I'm listening to my track on solo, right? All right, cool. And then I'm like, okay, let me solo reference track number 1 and see what that sounds like. And I can kind of flip back and forth between them. And for all my Ableton users, I'll show you a quick little trick for this. If you hit Command K, you can click your solo button for your track. And I like to use the little, it's called the tilde key, but you can hit any key you want on your keyboard. And then I'll hit the solo track for my reference track. And I'll use the same key. And now I have those set to where if I leave one track on and one track off, when I hit my little key that I just set, I can flip back and forth between them. Well, I used to. Maybe there's a, it looks like maybe there's a bug in that feature. Let's see if maybe I can do it this way then, if it won't let me do the solos. I'll do the channel on and off switches. So this way, okay, there we go. I can just turn on. You see I have my channel 1 turned on, and then with just this one key, I could turn on channel 5. So let me show you another one that you can do that's pretty cool. This is for Ableton, but they do have stuff like this in other programs. So I'm going to pick my channel 1, and I'm going to use my number 1, 2, number 2, 3, number 3, 4, number 4. So that way, I can literally just turn these on and off with my number keys. So that way, I can turn on number 1, and while I'm listening and it's looping, I can just go through these other tracks and see what they sound like. So let's put that at 0. And we'll just play my track, and as I'm looping the track, I'm going to flip through these other parts of these other tracks. So when I'm flipping through like that, and again, this is just a quick example to show how this process works, but as I'm flipping through the tracks, I notice, oh, well, I did all this mastering on my track, but why are these other tracks, they still sound way louder? And this is the point that I wanted to make to close off today's lesson. If you're referencing tracks, but if you notice, my reference tracks are all going out to the master output here. So all this mastering plugin stuff with the compressors and the limiter, all of my reference tracks are now going into my mastering chain. So you don't want that. You have to listen to your stuff unaffected. So you don't want your reference tracks to be going through your mastering chain. So you have to be sure to send your tracks that you're referencing against, send them directly out to your speakers, not through the master channel. So like I said, I want to go to my master actual output of 33 and 34 because that's where my speakers are actually going. So I'm going to change all of these at once from the master output. I want to go to an external out, which allows me to choose 33 and 34. So now when I'm just listening to them going directly out to the speakers, I'm not hearing my reference tracks also go through my mastering chain. So now we should be a little bit closer in the ballpark. Now this one is still crazy loud, but that's also because I had taken down my drums and all of this stuff here. So the point is, you will have to go back and forth with these. You're going to listen to a reference track, flip back to your track, and it'll probably be, okay, the reference track is still louder than mine. How much further can I push my compressor? How much further can I push my limiter? But again, without really hearing a lot of that stuff working, and you don't really want it pumping. So that's the trick when it comes to mastering. You're trying to constantly compare your stuff with previously finished, good mixed and mastered stuff so you can say, okay, where is my track lacking? And that's also the final point I wanted to make today was make sure that you're referencing your reference tracks not going through your mastering chain. You want to hear your stuff through your master channel. The reference tracks you want to just hear straight out to your speakers, unaffected. And then the other thing was, make sure that you're using a few different reference tracks, because not all of them are going to sound the same. You know, there's going to be different features to each one. Like one of them may have like the drums really super loud. Another may have the vocal super loud. So try to find a song that's kind of in the genre and the ballpark of what you're trying to achieve with your song. But get like 3 or 4 examples. Sometimes I've had like 5, 6, maybe 7 or 8 songs as a reference that I'm using while I'm doing this. Now, I also recommend, before you even start trying to reference for mastering purposes, I usually bring in references just when I start mixing. Because when you start mixing, it's easy to be lost in your own production because you've been working on it for so long. But then when you bring in that fresh song, and I highly recommend that you bring it actually into your DAW, because again, you'll be able to look at the waveforms and you'll be able to see exactly what's going on. So for example, real quick, and I'll close it up here. If I was to turn off, so all of my reference tracks are off, right? And then I just have my main track here, and let's just bounce my main track. I'm going to export it really quickly, and I'll just throw it on my desktop. And then what I like to do is when I finish mastering a track, I'll actually bring it back into the session. And like I said, you can then use some of your visual cues to look at it and say, oh, okay, well, that's what the track looks like when it's mixed down. And it's like, man, that looks pretty low compared to my reference tracks. What's going on here? And like I said, we know what's going on here because I turned down my drums 12 dB, my bass is down super, super low, and these finished tracks we can see are much higher. So this would have been my mastered mix right here, and this is another person's reference track that I'm using. So again, you can use these things visually to basically, again, problem solve and figure out what types of issues you may be having. Because after mixing and mastering and all this for maybe a few days or hours or weeks or whatever it gets hard to hear things. So print out a mix, look at it visually in your DAW, look at it against the other reference tracks. You know, is it way, way low like this one? Or maybe if you mastered it too hot, maybe it looks like that, which is what we call the 2x4. It's just smashed. And you've basically limited the crap out of it to where things are just smashed and you've got all this clipping going on, right? So these are some of the tools that I wanted to show y'all. Just kind of a brief summary today when it comes to mastering and kind of the reference thing. The next class, I'm going to get a little bit more into some specific tools like metering and how you can use that to really, really target in on your mix and your masters. And also how to basically meter these reference tracks to where you're actually going to be able to tell how much energy in volume and dB that your favorite, you know, whatever song it is that you like, rap, hip hop, EDM, country, rock, pop, whatever it is, you'll be able to almost see exactly how many dB their kick drum is using when it hits, how much their vocals are using. I'm going to show y'all how to zero in on that specific stuff in the next class. So I'll see y'all on Thursday for that. Don't forget, join the Music Producer School community. The comment is in the links on Facebook. And if you're looking to join us on all of our other social media channels, the links for all of that is also in the Facebook comments. Thank y'all for joining me once again, folks. Y'all go produce something. I'll see y'all again on Thursday, and y'all have a great day. Peace out.